Welcome back, public school advocates. It's the Ask Dr. Be Good show, where we share the practice, the pedagogy, and the politics currently happening in public education. As always, I ask that you write your name in the comments when you come in and let us know your thoughts on the topic that we're discussing. Any questions that you have, happy to answer them. And if you're not catching the live one, you can still put your questions in there and I'll get notified and I'll get the answers to you. Thanks again for being here. So let's get started with our current reality. Last week, I talked about the CDC and the American Pediatrics Association being sort of misaligned as far as wearing masks in school. CDC said didn't have to wear masks if you're vaccinated. The American Pediatrics Academy of Pediatrics. And they were saying, nope, they wanted everybody because not everybody can wear masks. You have kids who have allergies and asthma and so forth, and who cannot really wear a mask for long periods of time comfortably or safely. And so in their minds, everybody should wear a mask just to be on the safe side, unless the child absolutely cannot. And then, on top of everything else, doctors were very concerned about the fact that 83% of the new cases was the Delta variant. And a lot of times people who are vaccinated don't know they have it and would still spread it unknowingly. And so in their minds, because the science around masks, as is my understanding, is that you wear the mask to protect others. So a lot of people wear the mask to protect themselves when they're in busy areas. But really, we need to shift that thinking and say, you know what? If I'm in a busy area and I can't socially distance, then I should wear my mask because possibly I could have the Delta variants and I don't want to infect others. And so if we can sort of assume that mentality of just protecting others in high volume places, then maybe it will make sense for us to wear a mask more regularly. Now, this week, the CDC has reversed itself and said, you know what, we're going to align with what the American Academy of Pediatrics has said. And so they said the new science is worrisome in this new article that came out this week, and they now are recommending wearing masks again. So let's see why they reversed course. The CDC is also recommending universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, visitors inside schools from kinder to 12th grade, regardless of vaccination status. That aligns more closely with the guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics, which recommended this a month ago, that anyone really older than 2, if you can believe that, that's young, but training kids early to use safety features like that is probably a good idea. So the CDC and the AAP are still urging kids to return full-time to school. Everybody's now in agreement that being in school is the best place, right? Most kids need to be in school. And when I say most, what we're learning, of course, is that 99% of kids did not do well at home during the pandemic, virtually learning. So, and of course, we'll always have anomalies everywhere. And we did have anomaly kids who actually did better. But for the most part, it's important that kids get back to school. So the CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, we all recognize that name, said the Delta variant is showing every day its willingness to outsmart us and to be an opportunist. In rare occasions, some vaccinated people infected with the Delta variant after vaccination may be contagious and spread it to others. And this new science is worrisome and unfortunately warrants an update to our recommendations. According to the new science, she said, fully vaccinated people with breakthrough infections from the Delta variant have similar viral load to infections in unvaccinated people. That means the fully vaccinated are more likely to spread the virus with the Delta variant than the original coronavirus. So we're getting to the point where I think masks going to come back in fashion. I'm glad I didn't throw my fancier ones away. That's just where we are. Unfortunately, it's there's just too much unknowns right now. As always, what I would encourage you to do, if you're unsure about what your school wants, you should be getting communications from your school already. Many schools already have their staff in several districts around my area. School will be starting for kids around August, the week of August 9th anyway. August 9th is a Monday. And so staff's already in place, starting to get professional development towards the new year and all that. So if you haven't gotten communication from your school, you can do a couple of things. You can call the school and ask them, what will be the mask protocol? What are the COVID protocols? Is that in writing? Can that be emailed to you? Or you can look on the district website. They possibly could have that there. But that information should not be something that you really have to search for. They should be letting you know pretty regularly what the latest COVID protocols are. And I'm sure most districts, no district that I know is requiring vaccines, but I know that there are many families who did choose to get their kids vaccinated. And again, now understanding that if a child or an adult gets COVID after vaccination, after the second, 2 weeks after the second shot, I believe, when you're sort of fully more immune, then you do get a milder case of it. So, I mean, there's a positive there. And speaking of school and what's right around the corner, school supply shopping, right? Well, school supply shopping is, again, tainted by the pandemic. And recently I read an article that mentioned the fact that if you want certain type of backpack, certain type of clothing, apparel, sneakers for back to school, then you need to be either shopping online right now and seeing if you can get it in time for the start of school, or going to your stores now to see if you can locate it, because it is my understanding that due to supply chain issues, gosh, have we not heard that phrase before in the last year and a half? Supply chain issues are impacting many ways that we used to go shopping for school supplies. In the old days, you could see a row in a grocery store dedicated to school supplies and knickknacks and lunchboxes and backpacks and whatever else is associated with the start of school. Now, many grocery stores may have a little section up in the front, but they're not dedicating whole aisles to it. They just don't have the different. So the article said that less choice is what parents are finding. So you used to be able to have all sorts of choices in your backpacks, but now not so much. Now it is a matter of going and maybe possibly visiting a couple different stores, and then making sure that they either are carrying, or maybe there's a shipment soon, or here's a different train of thought, reusing what you had last year. If the lunch boxes are serviceable, if the backpacks are serviceable, then maybe we have that recycle, reuse, good for the environment chat with our kids. And we say, how about, since we can't find the backpack or the lunchbox that you want right now, can we use what we had last year? And then as things come in during the semester, let's see if we can pick it up later. Or maybe we get it at Christmas time from grandma as a gift, if it's in, have those conversations. A lot of times we shield our kids from what's happening in real life, and we shouldn't shield. We should make them a part of current events such that they understand why things are different now. My father was born in 1936. So that was the time when there was the crash, stock crash. Many people were in instant poverty. There were food lines, and his family was forced to be very, very frugal. His father passed away when my dad was 9, and his mother had to start teaching. She had been a not working mother, and very few females worked in the 1940s. But after her husband passed, she became a school teacher. So she had 4 kids and 1 salary of a school teacher. And you can imagine things were very frugal then. Well, he brought a lot of those practices from childhood with him. And I'm wondering if some of those aren't worth revisiting as far as helping our kids understand that being able to immediately get what we want every single time, is that really a healthy way of raising a kid? Because as an adult, it's rare for us to be able to get every single thing we want every single time. And so being able to prepare our kids to have some disappointments, maybe some have to wait for it, is maybe a healthier way of raising a kid than making sure that they get everything they want every time as a child. So just some reflection. Put your thoughts in the comments around that. But really, part of our work as parents and educators is to prepare kids for the future. Nobody has a perfect future. And so my reflection question to you all is, how are we helping our kids as we raise them prepare for a future that's not perfect? My final topic today is one that I have been wanting to do for a long time. And I finally am at a place where I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to have that conversation. And to help me with this conversation around consent, I've asked Judge John Payton to join me. Judge Payton has had 28 years of experience, Judge, as a
28
judge.
years on the bench and working with the jail and working with adolescents.
And so you not more than anybody, but you certainly, along with social workers and counselors and people who work with young people, you have heard the stories about kids whose consent was taken away. And so
in court, I mean, truancy court revealed that.
Right. And so and then led to the not wanting to go to school, not wanting to do, right, all of that stuff. That was the not wanting to go to school was a symptom of their assault, their consent not being heard. So the thing that has caught me more than anything with consent is two things, actually. One is that we tend to train our young ladies around it. We're forgetting boys, and putting the whole responsibility on the girls to learn what consent is and how to fight off somebody who doesn't respect our consent. But it was really brought home to me again when I read something that said we should. Somebody wanted to teach all of our young ladies to be black belts in karate so they could protect themselves. And then somebody else said, wait a minute, shouldn't we be teaching the males not to force themselves on females? Wouldn't that also be? And it was like, oh, we have not really trained the boys correctly in consent and what that looks like. So from a male standpoint, how do you counsel parents to start having that conversation of consent with their male kids?
So without there being anything that sparks the conversation, I think that the approach, if it were my approach personally, it would be a faith-based approach. This is our faith. This is what we believe in. This is how we operate as a family unit. This is how we believe in taking your relationship to the next level. For me, it would be a Christian perspective, right? And
Mhm.
so I would probably go to the Bible and share verses with my son and let him know that. So this is what our family values and morals are that we set up. And then I would attack the, hey, don't ever feel like this is something you have to do. You can always step out of the car, get out of the room, make the phone call. We will come pick you up, no questions asked. So you have a way out. You're not stuck. Number one. Number two, because they've got to know that they can trust you enough to not judge them, to give them an out. So they can feel like they can call you to come pick them up and they're not stuck because that was their ride, right? They didn't have their own car, let's say. The other aspect of it would be that there's no shame in it. There's no shame in the fact that you're not ready to give yourself to somebody else. My mother's conversation with me was, whoever you decide that you're going to have sex with the first time, understand that that's the person you'll never forget. So when you're 95 years old and your memory's going, that's the person you're going to remember, is always going to be the first person that you had intimacy with. And so make sure that that's the person you want. Because if it's not, then you could be living with that for the rest of your life. And so that gave me a perspective on, okay, is this person the person I really want to spend the rest of my life remembering? And I mean, I had that situation in high school on multiple occasions where I had women that, well, girls, we'd be doing the high school making out thing. And the next thing you know, hands are going places. And it's like, whoa, whoa, not for me. And I wasn't afraid to get out of the car, or I wasn't afraid to say, let me take you home, because this is not where I want to be. And so I think I share my personal experiences with my son as well. And so I think that you're open, you're honest, use your faith as a good moral compass. Let them know they've got an out without shame, and let them know there's no shame in saying no.
So while you were talking, a couple points came in my head, because males have an interesting dilemma, and we have to approach them in a couple different ways. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not male, but while you were talking, I thought, first of all, we need to train males to respect women's no, even if it's a no at the last minute, right?
Right.
But then they too can get caught in a situation where they're feeling uncomfortable and they need to be able to have the courage to back out, even with the understanding they might get teased on that, right?
Well, and that's that shame part, right? That's the part where you don't let somebody shame you. What's interesting is, and it goes back to probably the old mentality, I guess, where it's okay for a guy to talk about it in the locker room, it's a notch in his belt kind of a deal. But if a girl gets brought into the conversation and talked about publicly about that, it's, oh my gosh, she is a whatever.
Yeah.
She's easy. She's a hoe, or however that would come together, right? And so, but the other part that also comes to mind, Dr. Good, and I think it's important, especially today, is that be mindful of your situation. And I would advise my boy to do that. I would say, don't put yourself in a position where you're cornered and you are in that situation where you have to say no. And what I mean by that is it even extends to, because as a man, I think, okay, I say no, she gets mad. Next thing you know, she cries that I sexually assaulted her. And now I got to deal with that. And so as a guy, I think about that, right? I'm not married. If I were to go out on a date, I would make sure I keep everything very public, and I wouldn't put myself in a position where I was so privately with somebody that they could come back and say, hey, Judge Payton assaulted me, because they would have a lot to gain. I would have a lot to lose. And even though I would never do anything like that, because I'm a victim of being sexually assaulted, I would have to defend almost a defenseless position in the public scrutiny, because the public's going to believe what they're told on the news versus what comes out of a court proceeding. And so I would have to, I would inform my son about that as well. Be careful.
Yes. that it always goes back to that conversation that parents need to have ongoing with their kids, to where you build up that comfort level. And I know that I've said it a lot, and some parents are going to roll their eyes, and here she goes again. But I'm not only speaking to the gaps in the room, but just really supporting the understanding over and over that we've got to start these uncomfortable conversations with our kids early, so that when it really counts, when they're in their mid-teens and they're deep in the opportunity to really screw up their life, that
Right.
that we've taught them that out of calling and having that secret word. I know that I talked to my daughter-in-law who her daughter's almost 14 and has her first boyfriend. And so now is the time where all of this becomes really important. And
Right.
they have that code word anytime she goes out. And if she calls and says, "Mom, what about the pizza?" or something like that, Mom knows, boop, come on, I'm coming. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Get in the car, we'll go home. Things like that. Or it's even more, actually, I believe it's even more clever now. The girl texts the word pizza or some innocuous thing. Mother calls the parent of where she's spending the night or where she is and says, "Hey, you know what? We haven't had a family emergency. We need to pick her up."
Yeah.
No shame, no, and so what they have said though, and I think I've heard you say this, I've talked about this so much lately that I forget. Do it before the cops get there. If the cops get there before I do, you go to jail because you called me
Right.
too late. Was that you?
No, but I've said that in the past though.
Okay.
And what's interesting as well is people forget that men can be raped, they can be sexually assaulted. I'm not talking about boys in high school. I'm talking about full-blown men. I've had those scenarios in front of me in the jail. And what's sad is our society has built up this persona of a man and a woman, that if a man gets raped, well, he's just weak and he's a wuss. And what's wrong with him? Are you serious? And then it flips to, really, dude? Sure, you were raped, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you weren't really raped because you're a man now, right? You got some, and it's like, wow. And we're not sensitive to that at all.
Well, what people need to understand is the same exact framework or structures in place, and that is one of power over somebody less powerful,
Right.
whether male or female. And that, you can say that female to female too. I mean, there's all of those scenarios
Right.
are about power and anger.
Can be. And again, yes, we have more women sexually assaulted, more women raped, absolutely. Not diminishing that at all.
Mhm.
But as you've said with the topic, I mean, we also need to inform our boys how to be able to say no too. And again, let's say you don't have a faith. Let's say your family is atheist or agnostic. Then sit down and go over your moral compass and explain your moral compass to your son, and then give him again, these are your outs. I will, save you. Go to slip to the bathroom, text me pizza, and I'm going to show up at the door, ringing the doorbell rapidly because we're going to have a family emergency, or fade the heat on the shame. What's interesting, I don't know, other than their buddies might shame them, right? Because he didn't get some. And again, the concern would be, does the girl get so angry that she cries foul? And I mean, it's scary. I mean,
Yeah.
once that hits your record, boy, you're done.
And I hope, and maybe you can tell me, I know about 10, 15 years ago, if a 16-year-old was accused of doing something to a 14-year-old, or 17-year-old was accused of doing something to a even 16-year-old, there could be a rape charge there. Has that been fixed to where, because that's a rape charge that, or a pedophile charge even, right?
Well, it could be sexual assault of a child, right? But it's a 3-year threshold is what it is.
Okay.
So 17, 14-year-old, there's no such thing as consensual. And so the 17-year-old has to know, hey, you're 14, we can't do this. because I'm not going to jail or prison for you. 16, 14, not illegal. 17, 15, not illegal. So again, it's a 3-year threshold is what it is.
Okay.
There's a 3-year separation, then the older should know better and not be messing with the younger. The ones that get real interesting are the 19, 16-year-olds. The 16-year-old tells the 19-year-old, I'm 17. They date for a while. He goes over to her mom and dad's house. Everybody's fine and cool. They have consensual sex. She gets pissed about something. He's looking at another girl, something along those lines. She cries foul. There's a 3-year separation, but yet he told her, or she told him that she was 17. And so does he need to be checking ID? That's always been something that's handled in the DA's office with defense prosecutors and witness statements to determine, do we really have something legitimate? But at that point, you're really at a fine line. And you're up to a DA saying, yes, we're going to prosecute. No, we're going to prosecute. She clearly made herself look like and sound like she was 17. He didn't know she was 16. So, okay, we're going to pass on this one. Or, you know what? That's on him. He should have known how old she really was. Well, I mean, we trust people we date. So
Yeah.
you ask for ID? I mean, I guess.
Well, and so this conversation is not to scare parents. It's to make you reflect with your kids on scenarios, right? There's nothing better to chat with your kids around scenarios that have happened to other kids, haven't happened to you, and hopefully, doesn't. But that's what my constant work is, to help parents be able to parent especially their teens, in such a way that they get through this tunnel of teenhood at the other end, sort of safe from some of the stupid stuff. And oh my goodness, and we haven't even touched on drugs and alcohol and all that. Right. But and that all weighs in also. But thank you for helping me with this consent, because really it's all about respecting others and respecting yourself.
Right.
Young ladies have sometimes an identity issue where they don't really respect themselves. There's not self-love. And so they allow boys to have access to their body because they think that the boy will like them better.
Right.
And so all of those are things that parents need to be looking out for, teachers, other, longtime friends. If we see girls that don't have high self-esteem and they start sort of dressing in a way that attracts attention, and maybe running with a crowd that seems sort of headed in a direction that we recognize from the old days, right?
Right.
Maybe those are the chances that we have of connecting with these kids before anything happens. And that's how, I don't know if you remember, there's a program called AIM that teaches abstinence in the schools. And we do it almost every year to middle schoolers and ninth graders. And they do it in such a way that is funny, but what the point is you all have potential right now. And if you have sex and you get pregnant, that potential is just been limited or taken away completely.
Right.
You've heard story after story of kids who had such a great future and then they got pregnant on both sides, right? Male, female, and had to leave school, leave the scholarship and all that. And so again, parents, use this as the opportunity to chat with your kids and help them get through that tunnel of teenhood safely on the other side.
Right.
All right, everyone. Once again, our time has gone by quickly. I hope the topics have been of interest to you. Thank you, Judge Payton, for bringing your experience. It's invaluable to have people from the field in here to support what we see in articles and research and so forth. There's real life happening out there, and we can help our kids get through some of these real life challenges by being prepared. As always, thank you for being on. I will be putting some consent videos in the comment section so that you can show your kids what consent looks like, some role playing and so forth, so that you have the narrative, you have the words, you've got things that you can show your kids to help you with this ongoing, crucial conversation. Thank you, everyone. And don't forget, be looking for our podcast that John and I do together on saving the world through health and wellness. And we'll see you again next Sunday at 8 a.m.